Hi, everyone. Mike White here. Welcome to this week's vlog post. We're in the, I guess, first full week of August. We are well into the second of the three 90-day cycles that I talk about and have talked about in the past. And it's really important that we get to this phase and we really pay attention to what's going on in our particular markets. Now, the second phase is the probably least defined phase, that 90-day section, because it hangs so much on when your school year ends and your school year begins. So right now, in some parts of the country, kids have already started back to school. In other parts of the country, they're not going to go back until the first week of September. So the phase here is dependent upon your particular market. It doesn't mean that a lot of the things that are timely don't apply to you. It just means that some of those things can happen at different times, and the gaps between the second phase and the third phase can be greater or shorter depending upon your calendar year. Same thing happens between the first and the second. So for those of you who are not aware of what I'm bringing up, you can go into past blog posts and you can see where I've written about the three 90-day cycles in the mortgage business. And right now, it's really important that regardless of where you are, you take a really good look at your accountant ledger, all those accountants that you've worked with that you've been saving. If you haven't been saving them or writing them down somewhere, now would be a great time to dedicate yourselves to compiling that list of accountants, whether you know them or have experience. We've talked about speaking to the accountants, especially those when we have clients that have borrowers where we've had to get tax returns. You've already made that introduction. You've already spoke to them in the past, and you've at least set yourself up so that you're not a complete unknown, so that you can talk to that accountant, and especially now, putting that list together, because you're going to need that list for the first week of September, because you're going to want to start calling on those accountants and sharing with them the fact that, here's what's going on in the mortgage environment, here's what's going on in the rate environment, but more importantly, having that conversation with that accountant, especially for the people that they're going to be contacting in the next few weeks about putting together their tax returns. Remember, everybody that filed the tax return extension request back in April is required to get those tax returns sent in and filed by October. And so those accountants are going to be going back and they're going to be talking to those people. And it tends that those people are likely, not always, but likely business owners, self-employed, those types of people that sometimes have very complicated tax returns or a lot of different moving parts in their lives. And here we are at that stage that accountant is going to be helping them collect everything they need so that accountant can put together those returns to get them filed in time. And that opens up the door to a conversation that many people never have with accountants never have with their clients. And it's something that I've talked about for years. I use this strategy to open doors for me that I would have never had open to me. It helped me establish relationships I never would have had if I didn't do it. And the reality is it's a very simple strategy. They're filing tax returns in October. And those October tax returns they're filing is for 2023. Well, the reality is they're going to file those 2023 tax returns in October of 2024. It also gives them an opportunity to file their 2024 tax returns in February of 2025. Well, why is this important? Well, self-employed borrowers, for the most part, if we're going fully documented, are likely going to have to supply their tax returns. How they file those tax returns, when they file those tax returns, what they choose to include in those tax returns is very relevant, because they have an opportunity going into October of this year to look at their overall situation, have the conversation. Would they benefit from selling their house and buying another one? Would they benefit from buying investment properties? Would they benefit from buying additional properties? Would they benefit from refinancing property? Well, if any of those things are true, then taking the opportunity to file those tax returns in October and then again in February will give you 2 years worth of documented income, documented provable income that you can use to qualify them for whatever loans they may need in the early part of 2025. Does this matter to everybody? No. But for those people that it can make a difference for, it makes a huge difference. And for those of you who are speaking to accountants on this level and having this conversation, it changes the relationship. It shows that accountant that you bring value to the table. It shows that accountant why they need to know you. You're not just sitting there looking for handouts. You're bringing something to the table for them and their clients that can be very useful. Those relationships that you can make then and make now are significant because you never know what kind of doors they open up to. These are powerful relationships if you just put yourself out there and have these conversations. Because again, we don't know what the future holds. And sometimes neither do the accountants and the financial planners and the attorneys and the clients themselves know that this opportunity to do this even exists. So by putting it on the table, it gives them all options. And it puts you in a position to cultivate a relationship over time that can be extremely productive and profitable. So just keep that in mind as we go forward. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up last week's BLS jobs report. You know I'm not and have not been a big fan of the BLS. I've shared with you repeatedly how their misinformation, how their wacky algorithms and how they come to conclusions that nobody else comes to are really painful to the market and to the world in general because they refuse to fix it, and that the adjustments that the BLS makes to their numbers months and sometimes years after they put it out there, it really doesn't do us much good to find out a year or two later that they miscalculated job creations by 300, 400, 500,000 or more jobs. What coming home to roost this last month was that they can't run the emperor wears no clothes model any longer. It has now become very transparent that the BLS numbers are and have been way out of line for an extended period of time. That became very obvious on Friday. The markets were forced to come to that conclusion. You saw how the market reacted, and we had some extreme volatility. Now, granted, we've given back a good portion of those gains that we saw on Friday, but it didn't really initially impact mortgage rates to the extent that the market moved, because even the markets were aware that the reaction to these numbers was going to take some time to settle in. And we've given back some of those gains that were initially thought were going to be this big move. And as I've told you before, I do not expect a fast drop in mortgage interest rates. I expect it to be volatile, but I expect it to be slow and steady. And whether or not the Fed has an emergency rate cut, whether or not they wait till September for more information, whether they cut by 25 or 50, whatever, all of this stuff is going to be an emotional reaction to information we're already aware of. The economy is not as good as we thought. Job market's not as good as we thought. There's a lot of things that are not as good as have been represented. And for those people who have been paying attention, and they've already seen this, the market's going to adjust slowly. Now, again, this is going to be months and months and months of easings. Now, the good news is there are some people out there who have mortgage rates, and refinancing will be an obvious thing for them to do. And getting yourself prepared for looking at your database. Who are my clients who are in the 7 or 8% interest rate environment who would benefit from a 6% rate? And who are the people in my database who'd benefit for rates in the 5s and who would benefit from the rates in the 4s? And have those conversations as they come up. I will tell you, be very cautious, be very careful, because there's already loan officers out there, there's already mortgage companies out there that are blasting social media and advertising lower interest rates and all these other things. And here's the problem. You're going to screw up your own business. You don't want to be out there promoting now's the time to refinance, rates are dropping, but that's not a thing you do on social media. It's a conversation you have one-on-one with your database over the phone. It's something that you do and have that personal conversation. Why? Because you've got a pipeline right now, and that pipeline is not going to be favorable to you if they think, well, interest rates are going to drop precipitously, I'm going to hold off. Well, I'm going to wait until rates get to 4. And what happens? You've killed your pipeline. The other thing you also do is now you get money taken out of your pocket because everybody you just closed is going to run to the internet to find out who's got the cheapest rate. And they're going to start refinancing at numbers and margins that are going to put you over a barrel and engage in conversations where you're going to fight to keep from getting EPOs. And nobody wants that. So you don't want to upset your apple cart with your existing pipeline. You don't want to upset the apple cart with people that you've closed in the last 4 or 5 months. You certainly don't want to mess up the people you're currently working with. So it's really important that you have one-on-one personal conversations as to what's going on and why, and how you're preparing to help them go through this transition, which may take years. We're not going to see, and I don't know if we're ever going to see 3 and 4% rates again. But if we're going to see 3 and 4% rates again, it's not happening tomorrow. So keep that in mind as you move forward. Have these one-on-one conversations. And as always, if you have questions or comments, it's Mike, imtcoaching.com. Take care. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.